Welcome to Slash Forward. In this episode, we're going to try not to spend too long staring directly up a grown man's butt crack with Stuart Gordon's Castle Freak. Let's get to it. We open on an old lady in an old kitchen, preparing some old-ass food. Honestly, everything in here is crusty as hell. She carries off the plate with a bit of a rattle in her breathing, something I'm sure she's gonna get checked out soon enough. As caretaker of this large estate, she's fulfilling her duty by descending into the family dungeon and whipping the family gimp, who she then feeds, creating somewhat of a mixed message. Because this has been her only cardio for years, she has no choice but to wander upstairs and expire. Cut ahead and we find John and Susan Riley traveling with their blind daughter Rebecca to the previously featured castle. John is the last living relative of the family that owned it, and is now the sole beneficiary of the estate. They intend to inventory the contents and liquidate as quickly as possible. The Rileys are also mildly estranged. Susan's coldness seems to be somewhat justified, as we find in a flashback later on that John drove his kids drunk in the rain, leading to Becky's blindness and their son's untimely death. This rouses him from his sleep and he goes to explore a strange noise, but only ends up confronting his own inner demons. The housekeeper regales them with an enchanting story of infanticide, stating that the Duchess who owned the castle and her American baby daddy, who was also John's ancestor, supposedly killed their son Giorgio in a blind rage, and it's rumored that Giorgio's ghost still haunts the castle. The next morning, Becky finds herself in an emo mood when her Learn Italian Now tapes taunt her.
The flower is red.
Yeah, she'll never need to say that. So John tries to distract her by having her help with the inventory. He tries finding the good stuff, but only ends up coming across disturbing artifacts like Grandma's tools of intimacy. Becky wanders off to explore a noise and ends up following an old tabby into the basement. Before she can investigate too thoroughly, she's called back by John. In the cell, our captive friend is energized both by the visit and also by the protein of the kitty and manages to break himself free. We find that Susan gets upset whenever Becky asserts any degree of independence. Becky is upset that, amid the fuss, no one believes her claim of hearing a mystery castle occupant. That evening, they enjoy slabs of meat in the servants' quarters while their unexpected guest makes his way back into polite society. When he's angered by the mirror displaying its truth, he provides another clue of his presence to the Rileys, which is casually explained away.
The wood warped.
He creeps on Becky that night, and her screams send John off in search of an opportunity for violence. But he ends up in the mausoleum where a picture that reminds him of his lost son causes him to gently tuck away his rage boner. John tries to show Susan what he found, but the picture of Giorgio is now gone. The rekindling of this trauma sends him into a despair tailspin, so he goes to drown his sorrows at a pub where he discovers the rural Italian sex trade flourishing. He gets cut off and run off, making it rain lira left and right. Recognizing he owes the senora a glass of wine, he takes her to where he knows of a few bottles. He then almost immediately starts behaving like he's in a music video, and we see that he's being watched as he makes an odd choice. And he's almost immediately racked with guilt. Before she can leave afterwards, our mysterious friend swipes a bottle and her. The next morning, the police arrive, and since Silvana was last seen in John's company, they have some awkward questions to ask him in front of his wife. We find her waking up and the hooded freak attempting to recreate the evening's ritual. Unfortunately, he's missing all the essential parts, which I won't show you here. She tries to glass him to get away, but he's an expert chain fighter at this point, and he ends up eviscerating her. The housekeeper hears her blood-curdling screams and goes to investigate despite her instinct to flee, and comes upon a grisly scene. Since the freak only learned to communicate through whipping, he just tries to ask her a simple question, but with devastating results. Susan and Bex attempt to leave, but are told to stay in town until the police have a chance to investigate. Meanwhile, John remembers the whip and has a moment of inspiration, rushing in to examine little boy Giorgio's burial drawer, which is found to be empty. Now realizing the mysterious killer is Giorgio, all grown up, and has been in the castle the whole time, he implores the police to search it. They refuse, but that's okay. They passed all the evidence on their way in. They arrest John on suspicion and leave a guard behind with the ladies. They don't last long, however, as one becomes victim to an exhaust hood hanging and the other to a surprise face eating. This goes mostly unnoticed by Susan, leading to her being knocked unconscious. This leaves Giorgio to nab Becky at his leisure and retreat to his hideout. Susan wakes up, grabs a knife, and goes hunting. Meanwhile, back at the station, John manages to escape the precinct. Giorgio secures his prize, takes a quick water break, and then practices his new seduction skills, but is interrupted by Susan, who offers herself in an exchange. He falls for it and gets stabbed in the back. Then he chases them through the castle until eventually they end up on the roof. John arrives and attempts to redeem himself through general heroism, but finds that only sacrifice will set things right. So he latches himself to Giorgio and takes a flying leap, which is sad, but then they just kind of head home. And that was Castle Freak, a movie about a man with no penis. If you enjoyed the video, I'd love for you to become a part of the channel by subscribing. Thanks for watching.